America is facing a question no one expected in 2025. Why are millions still struggling just to pay for basic living? Prices have cooled, but life hasn't gotten cheaper. In fact, for many, it's getting worse. Today, we break down the real reasons behind the 2025 cost of living crisis, and the truth may shock you. In 2025, affordability has become a national crisis. More than half of American families say they can no longer afford basic living expenses. Even as inflation slowed on paper, everyday essentials, food, rent, electricity, childcare never returned to pre-pandemic prices. Household budgets are stretched thin. Millions are living paycheck to paycheck, and savings are rapidly disappearing. The feeling on the street is one of exhaustion. People are working harder than ever, but their money just doesn't go as far. The numbers paint a stark picture. 52% of U.S. families can't afford basic costs in 2025. This isn't just about a few expensive items. It's about the foundational pillars of a stable life. The cost of shelter, the price of a full grocery cart, the monthly utility bills, and the ever-present burden of healthcare are all squeezing the American dream. For many, the financial cushion they once had is gone, replaced by a constant state of anxiety over the next bill. This isn't a temporary setback. It's a persistent, grinding reality that is reshaping how Americans live, plan, and hope for the future. Housing is the biggest pressure point. Rent has reached record highs in 2025, with many cities seeing increases of 20% to 40% over the past few years. New housing construction hasn't kept up with demand. Families are being priced out of their neighborhoods, young adults are delaying moving out, and overcrowding is becoming more common. This isn't a problem confined to major coastal cities anymore. It has spread across the country, affecting mid-sized towns and suburbs alike. The dream of homeownership is slipping further out of reach for a new generation, as high mortgage rates and inflated home prices create an almost insurmountable barrier. For renters, the situation is just as dire. Landlords, facing their own increased costs, pass them on, leading to bidding wars for apartments and a constant fear of the next rent hike. This housing crunch is a fundamental driver of the affordability crisis, forcing people to dedicate an ever larger share of their income just to keep a roof over their heads, leaving little for anything else. Grocery prices tell another painful story. Even with inflation cooling, food prices remain 25% to 40% higher than they were a few years ago. Eggs, bread, milk, vegetables, Americans feel the jump every week. Low-income households are cutting back on fresh food and protein, shifting to cheaper, less healthy options. A trip to the supermarket has become an exercise in difficult choices. Families are meticulously comparing prices, searching for deals, and often leaving essential items behind. The gap between food inflation and wage growth has widened significantly, meaning each paycheck buys less food than it did before. This has profound consequences, not just for household budgets but for public health. When families can't afford nutritious meals, it leads to long-term health problems, creating another cycle of financial strain from medical bills. The sticker shock at the checkout counter is a constant, weekly reminder of how much ground has been lost in the battle for financial stability. One of the biggest reasons Americans are struggling is that wages simply haven't kept up. For many workers, pay is rising 3 to 4% per year, while essential living costs have jumped 20 to 50%. This creates a widening affordability gap. People are working more, but getting less in return. Whether you're a teacher, a nurse, a retail employee, or a delivery driver, the story is often the same. The raises you get, if you get them at all, are swallowed whole by the rising costs of rent, food, and gas. It feels like running on a treadmill that's constantly speeding up. This wage stagnation isn't a new phenomenon, but it's been thrown into sharp relief by the recent surge in prices. The value of a hard day's work has diminished. This economic reality is eroding the core promise of the American economy, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you can get ahead. For millions, that promise now feels hollow. To survive, millions of Americans are turning to credit cards and loans. But rising interest rates have made debt more dangerous than ever. Americans are trapped using debt to pay for essentials and then struggling to escape the growing balances. In 2025, national credit card debt has hit a new record. What was once used for large, one-time purchases is now being used to cover gas, groceries, and utility bills. It's a short-term solution that creates a long-term problem. With the Federal Reserve having raised interest rates to combat inflation, the cost of carrying that debt has skyrocketed. People find themselves paying more and more in interest, with less of their payment going toward the actual principal. This creates a vicious cycle where debt becomes a permanent and stressful part of life, a heavy anchor dragging down any chance of financial progress. It's a survival mechanism that has become a trap. Some areas are hit harder than others. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Austin, and Seattle have seen extreme price increases. Meanwhile, many rural areas face shortages of jobs and healthcare and other form of economic pressure. The cost of living crisis is not a one-size-fits-all problem. In major metropolitan hubs, the housing market is the primary source of pain, with rent and home prices soaring to unsustainable levels. These are places where high-paying jobs are concentrated, but even those salaries are often not enough to afford a comfortable life. In contrast, in more rural parts of the country, the issue might be a lack of economic opportunity. Jobs are scarce, wages are low, and access to essential services like hospitals and broadband internet is limited. So, while the specific challenges may differ from a bustling city to a quiet town, the underlying theme of economic strain is a shared American experience. In 2025, Americans are adapting however they can. Many are taking on second jobs, cutting subscriptions, moving in with relatives, delaying medical care, or living with roommates well into adulthood. The middle class is shrinking, and financial stress is becoming a daily reality. The side hustle is no longer a way to earn extra fun money. For many, it's a second or third job needed just to make ends meet. Families are making tough decisions, forgoing vacations, canceling streaming services, and cooking every meal at home. We're seeing a rise in multi-generational households, not just for cultural reasons, but out of financial necessity. People are putting off doctor's visits and dental appointments, hoping small health issues don't become large, expensive ones. These are not just lifestyle adjustments. They are fundamental shifts in how people live, driven by a relentless economic pressure that has redefined what it means to be financially secure. The 2025 affordability crisis isn't just about prices. It's about structural issues, housing shortages, slow wage growth, corporate pricing power, regional inequality, and economic uncertainty. It's a system that millions are struggling to survive in. When we look at the big picture, it's clear this isn't a problem with a single cause or a simple solution. Decades of underbuilding have led to a severe housing deficit. The relationship between productivity and pay has been broken for years, with workers seeing a smaller share of the economic pie. During and after the pandemic, some corporations leveraged supply chain issues and high demand to increase profit margins, and those prices have been slow to come down. And the economic landscape is filled with uncertainty, making businesses and consumers hesitant to make long-term plans. All these factors have combined to create a perfect storm, a complex web of challenges that has trapped the American consumer. So the real question is, will 2026 be any better? Will rents fall? Will inflation finally ease? Or is the cost of living crisis the new normal in America? The forecasts are mixed. Some economists believe that as housing construction slowly catches up and supply chains fully normalize, we could see some relief. Others are more pessimistic, pointing to persistent wage stagnation and the potential for new global shocks to keep prices elevated. The path forward is uncertain. In Part 2, we break down the predictions you need to know. We'll explore the potential policy solutions being debated and what experts believe the next few years could hold for your wallet. Will the system correct itself, or are fundamental changes needed to restore affordability for the average American family? Subscribe for Part 2, coming next.